I know this title is a little over the top, but I've been looking at Frank Bach's work, and I just want to start with a complete open architecture, if you will, so that we don't put a wall or a ceiling on this conversation. I'm posting Frank's website so you can check out his work. He's a mindful guy. He designs for mindfulness. He works at Headspace. If you don't know what Headspace is, it's an incredible app that helps you be at peace. But when talking with him via email, I was looking at some of his links, and he knows a lot of stuff, from design to building community around design, e-commerce. He's got a band called Monk. He's really into being a thought leader, but in a really cool, let's all do this. Let's get messy and let's get productive at the same time. Some of the people he's worked with, Headspace, Red Bull, stop right there, right? The country of Canada. Frank, welcome to Swell. We want to talk shop with you for sure, what you love to do, and also just where it fits for you to talk about your trajectory, because I know that sometimes we try to put ourselves in a linear mode to help people see who we've been and what we're doing. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but it'd be great to understand where you have found complete grounding in your work, because you are a grounded guy. You do stuff. You're not some outlier. You are in society, being a leader, having a very respectable job, and yet it seems like you probably could do everything. So ground us with you. What helps you define your work, and how do you see yourself moving into this space as this space changes? Are you a leader? Are you watching? Are you reactive? Are you proactive? Design is so dynamic. Where do you fit in the trajectory right now? And thanks for being here, by the way.
Wow, okay, what an intro. Thanks so much for that, and thank you for the invite, for having me. It's a great platform. Where do we start? I think a friend of mine told me a couple months ago, they said, Frank, a lot of people talk about the things they want to do, the things they will do. I'm going to build an app. I'm going to, start a business. I'm going to, buy a house, or just do a thing. They have dreams, aspirations, and the difference between you and them, Frank, is that you actually go and do it. You put together a plan, you follow the necessary steps. Pretty much anything in life, I think, is achievable with a good plan, and also, be ready to kind of deviate from that plan when the time comes. You asked how do I define my work? Headspace is the main thing for sure. That's my full-time day job. But ever since I was a kid, I was definitely entrepreneurial, very project oriented. I like to make things. I like to bring things to life. And I think that probably started when I was a kid, doing music. I was playing in a punk band with some friends, and we hardly knew how to play our instruments, and I was definitely not the strongest musician, but I had a knack for creating artwork for the band, the logistics of touring, and making sure we had a merch table that we could sell stuff and keep gas in the van and continue on to the next city. And that whole process of creating something out of nothing, it didn't exist and now it does, and now there's value to it, I think was one of the best early on lessons for me. And it's, that kind of do-it-yourself approach is still something that I try to do these days. And of course, I've got the job at Headspace. I've been there for about 7 years, and it's kind of hard to say what came first, the interest in mindfulness and wellness or Headspace. I think they both just kind of happened at the same time. And pretty much anything that I do is usually rooted in mindfulness or wellness or community oriented. there's usually like an art and culture kind of angle to it. And you can see that, I think, with my e-commerce project, Sunshine Shop. That's mostly a place where I start to make some apparel, some clothes. And, I knew that I like to make stuff, and I like to, if I make stuff, I don't want it to just sit in the garage and collect dust. I want to get it out to people. So I thought, let's get this store running, and who knows what we can sell on it. We could sell anything. And that was kind of part of the branding as well, of calling it Sunshine Shop. It's kind of everything under the sun kind of thing. But nowadays we're mostly working with artists and creators, mostly underrepresented artists, that have a focus in the wellness space for sure. Some are, mindfulness teachers, some are authors, some are cartoonists, some are just, creators or influencers who have a really great kind of audience that they connect with. And we help them make merch collections, but also help them with like making books and ebooks, and soon probably some music. But yeah, I think that's like kind of the whole ecosystem. And I sometimes people ask me, Frank, what do you decide to work on any given day? And like the answer is, I just have a huge list of everything, personal, work related, relationship related, and I just chip away at that list a little bit every day. Sometimes I get a lot done, sometimes I don't get a lot done, but usually something gets done off that list. And that's kind of where I'm at. Got a lot going on, and the music stuff is about to kick off again soon. It's been a long time since I've made music. I think I've focused so much on my career for the past kind of 15 years, and I think I've got to a place that I can be really, really proud of. And never believed when I was a kid sitting in my parents' house in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada, that I'd be, a father, husband, living in Southern California, homeowner in Los Angeles. Like all these things were like really aspirational dreams. And, it's not beyond me that I look outside and I'm seeing, beautiful weather. I can jump on my skateboard any day. Like this is it, man. This is
Frank, it's really great to hear your voice and to hear your gratitude and your perspective. It's so refreshing to know what you have and to know how you got there. And something you said really moved me, which is that amazing thing that happens when we create. There was nothing there, and then now there's something there. And that really resonates with me. And I'm sure all the creatives out there listening understand that beautiful sort of profound relationship we have with the space we fill with the work we do, whether it's visual or creative or writing or mixed media. It's just gorgeous to hear you frame it that way. It's just so great to hear your voice. And I think as more voices join in, this too will be a creative process. That's what I love about conversation. You never know where it's going. I wanted to ask, as more voices join, for you to talk a little bit about the punch list that you talked about, the things you want to do, and how invigorating it is to know you have a list. But from month to month or even week to week, you probably have different priorities. And those priorities reflect what you choose to work on based on what you have in the punch list. And it feels to me like that's a discipline that you've procured over years of work. Can you talk to people a little bit about prioritizing multiple projects at once, and what different days must feel like for you to say, wow, I'm not feeling it this day, so I'm not going to go towards something, even though I might have had it as a priority. I think juggling that beautiful opportunity to choose one thing over the other has a lot of strings connected to it, obligations and realism and all, deadlines and things like that. But can you talk a little bit about your process of prioritizing and choosing and picking, and what are the factors and variables that go into that process, so that people who are also multiple creators, like multidisciplinary, and they have different projects, I think I think it's a common question about what do I lean into each time I wake up. And I know you have a full-time job, so that's obviously takes precedent. But besides that, how do you make choices and sort of bring us into that process? So looking forward to hearing from you more. You just feel like such a beautiful soul, and it's so great to be able to kind of get into this with you. And I'm looking forward to some more voices joining us from all our worlds. Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely. So the full-time job is the number one thing. That's going to be pretty much every day, taking up a huge chunk of the day. And anything else is just a bonus, really. And I really try to look at projects as, they're definitely like time commitments. And I try to scope out in my mind, like, how much time is this thing going to require, and where can I fit that into my schedule? Is it going to be something where I need to wake up a couple hours earlier, a few days a week for a month, for 2 months? Where realistically is that work gonna fit in, and where is it gonna happen? And can I handle it at this moment? And for sure, I've made the mistake of overwhelming myself, taking on a bit too much. But I think a big question to ask yourself is, like, what is driving the deadline? Classic kind of corporate speak thing. Like, where did this deadline come from? What are the pressures of this project? And I do my best to take on projects that have pretty loose deadlines. So, if it kind of happens this quarter, this year, then we're good. We're happy with that. And being realistic with the timelines that, you can't take on 3-4 major projects at the same time. You're just it's gonna be too much, and you're gonna fail at probably all of them. So I think another part too is having a good support group. I do these design workshops, but I definitely don't do them all on my own. I have somebody, a woman named Julie Stanescu, who runs the workshops and does the marketing and sells the tickets and all that stuff, and really allows me to just show up and do my thing. So when I look at something like the workshops, from a time perspective, they take up 5 hours every quarter. So that's pretty much it, other than, putting some tweets out and doing a few posts around them. That's basically a 5-hour commitment. So big impact. Looks like I've got a lot going on, but realistically it's only 5 hours. For things like the shop, I've tried to delegate as much as possible. I have somebody who's running the social media at all times. I'm still doing the bookkeeping on my own, which is a very, boring menial task, but has to be done. That one takes up a little bit more time, but that's probably the next one to get outsourced to somebody. So I'm always trying to think impact, and also putting in a lot of effort up front that hopefully pays off on the back end. So for example, again, the shop, I could realistically not touch anything for a month, 2 months, and not a lot will change. So when I do have time to contribute to it, I'm able to do that, but it's kind of on my own timeline, without, those outward pressures to have like deadlines kind of thing. Yeah, when I'm creating talks, I would say I have about 4 or 5 topics that I try to cover, and I mentioned in the earlier question, kind of putting in a lot of upfront work and then having it pay off later down the line. I would say that all of those topics have pretty robust keynote slides and talking points and all that stuff, but I've done them all so much and so often that I could pretty much just kind of jump straight into it and almost do them off the back of my hand. And those topics, I would say, started with a curiosity where I thought, I'd like to, teach myself more about a certain subject, or, sometimes they're around designing for moments of delight. Sometimes they are mindfulness tips for the workplace. I try to cover a couple things. Sometimes it's design specific. Sometimes it's more kind of something that anyone can relate to. And so what starts as a curiosity or sometimes just a reflection of the work I'm doing at the time or something that I've uncovered or something that I think is a interesting thread to keep pulling, I'll just go deep on that with the talk. And, if nobody knows that you're doing these things, then, you won't get booked, you won't get recognized for it. So I try to be, as loud and proud about the stuff I'm doing as possible and, broadcasting that stuff on social media. And I would say it's just word of mouth where, different teams, different companies they're constantly looking for inspiration for speakers. Sometimes their teams are in a little bit of a rut and they need to be motivated, or they just want to have kind of like a lunch and learn or a fireside chat in the morning or something like that. And that's usually when they come and tap me in, and then I'll work with them to figure out what it is that they're looking for. Is it just a conversation with some questions, or would you like a more robust presentation? Would you like it to be more engaging, more like workshop style, where we work through some exercises and leave them with some homework and that kind of thing? And so it always kind of looks a little bit different, but I'd say the bulk of the work around the topics that I'm trying to be expert in, I've put in the long hours creating the contents of all these things, and now it's really just an execution game. It's just pick from the list what your team is needing, and I'll show up and do my thing, and we'll work through it together. And another thing I wanted to add is, since the pandemic and since working from home remotely at Headspace, not having a commute and having a little bit more control over my days and time spent on certain things, I would say that's opened up a huge amount of possibilities when it comes to kind of the other stuff I'm interested in and the other activities I'm taking on. Just that flexibility of I've pretty much gained 10 to 12 hours per week, mostly in the mornings and in the evenings where I'd usually be driving. And not to mention, we do at Headspace have alternating 4-day work week. So every second Friday is a day off, and the alternating Friday is a no meeting day. So you can imagine, sometimes I'll take that Friday off and just kick back and get some me time or spend some time with the family. But other days I'll jam through that list of to-dos on the Friday off, and that in a way is a little bit of it's kind of like my big secret, that extra day that most people don't have. I highly encourage it. I know it would be hard as a manager at a company to pitch to your HR that your team needs 4-day work weeks so they can focus more on the other projects they want to take on. But for me, it's working very, very well, and I feel super blessed to have that opportunity. And I really think side projects sometimes they're things you can monetize, and sometimes they're just things you do for fun. Sometimes the fun thing turns into a business, and sometimes the business turns into a hobby. And we talked a lot about all the different things I do, and definitely on the musical side, the artistic side, like that stuff is very much a hobby, and I'm at a place in my life where I can take that risk and afford the luxury of taking on a hobby like that. But it still has to make somewhat financial sense. So I mentioned earlier being aware of how much time any kind of project might suck up, but also being conscious of how much money something might take, and having a little bit of a plan on how much of your own time and how much of your own financial investment you're willing to put into something. And then usually at that point it's a pretty simple, just a simple math around, is this time and effort and money worth investing in this? And sometimes you take bigger bets on yourself, and sometimes it may not be worth it. But sometimes that the hobby that turns into a business, or the business that turns into a hobby, sometimes that can be a nice, pleasant surprise. I want to add too that I really think productivity can be seasonal. You might have a really busy winter where you get so many things done, and then you want to relax a little bit more in the summertime or in the spring or whatnot. And so I think if you're not feeling as productive as you feel like you should be, or as others around you, don't beat yourself up for it. Since becoming a parent, I have a 2.5-year-old at home. Definitely have a little bit less time to spend on the more I guess selfish projects. But at the same time, it can be motivating, because I am trying to support my family as best as I can. And some of the motivators around why I've gotten accustomed to kind of doing so much is that, a few years back, being Canadian, living in the U.S., when me and my wife moved here, I was the only one with a work permit. So I, basically had to figure out, how do I support two people on one income? And that led me to figuring it out. I just tried to figure out these extra, more passive ways that I could earn a little bit of extra income. And, now we're super lucky that, she gets to be a stay-at-home mom and raise our kid and be like the best parent possible. And then I'm taking care of kind of all the other stuff. So that's the other little secret is, to be a productive person, to kind of have all this stuff going on. I do have the ultimate support, which is a partner who is, running the show at home.
Hey, Frank, it's so beautiful. I just been listening to this and also to Adam's question. It feels like upon reflection, you probably discover parts of yourself and what you're actually wired like by talking about it. I feel like one of the things I love about conversation and talking is that sense of discovery as you're speaking, if you're open to it. And I feel like you are. And to sort of analyze gently, how do we parse out our interests, our responsibilities, our whims, which are very important for creative people to do, like just to make sure you don't lose that whim. I get so impatient with myself if I have an idea and I tuck it back inside and then I forget what it was. And that's really important to keep that conversation going. And I just love your hats off to your wife too. That was a beautiful coda here that I really appreciated. Thank you for being on Swell. I hope you drop in and do some swell casting yourself. I feel like, this is a very intimate, beautiful place to have sort of audio journaling and inviting people in to discover and discuss and iterate on ideas that might be just, a little pea-sized. And it's very generative to have people come in and say, here's my thought. So maybe making this a place where it's like a canvas for you. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and send this out to the world, and let's keep the conversation going. Take care.